Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel Thailand Bound. If you haven't been here before, my name is Peter and I talk about all things Thailand. Today I'm going to be reading out 3 viewers' stories and I'm happy to report that these stories have never been read out on my channel before. They're good stories. The first one is a little bit longer than normal, but it's very well written and I enjoyed reading it the first time round, so hopefully you guys will as well. Now, I can't believe how incredibly fast time has gone. I've now been in Hua Hin for 6 weeks today. As you know, I moved down from Bangkok. It's already 6 weeks. But what I've been doing in between, I've been going around getting some fresh background footage for the stories, okay? So the background footage that I shot a couple of weeks ago, it's on around Soi 94, and it's a kind of one of the main tourist areas. You've got near the Hilton, Bintabat, and around Soi 94. I filmed it in the daytime, obviously, but it'll give you an idea of the layout and what it's like down here in Hua Hin, okay? So let's jump straight into the first of 3 stories today.
สวัสดีค่ะ
The entire experience of Thailand began in a small city in Canada in 2007. I had been dating a Chinese Singaporean at the beginning of my 3rd year of university. We had a very stable relationship and I felt the relationship was quite worth it. Unfortunately, after about a year into it, she was visiting a guy friend who lived across the hall too frequently, and I said if it didn't stop, I'd be leaving. This made her lose it, and I wasn't going to live with someone who disrespected my boundaries that way. This was about 2 or 3 months before I was to finish my first degree. The hook of this relationship is that we had made a plan to move to Singapore to pay off our school debts, and I would be able to learn about where she came from and hopefully understand her better. Obviously, that would not happen as we parted ways. Despite that, I was still curious to learn more about Singapore after she told me so many good things about it, and I said, what the heck, why not go there anyway? So I had it set that I would go to Singapore as a graduation gift to myself. Of course, when my ex heard from my brother and best friend that I was still going to Singapore, she flipped out. I couldn't help but revel in her misery. Years later, she would confide in me that she was actually in love with me and didn't know how to deal with my boundaries. She had gone to therapy, so a few months later, after I graduated, I had my ticket ready to go to Singapore and I would see what Asia had to offer. The plane ride alone was enough to shock me. How a plane could stay in the air for that long, I thought. Touching down in Singapore was surreal. There really isn't an airport that I've seen that has quite the class and quality of Changi Airport. Immigration was flawless and I didn't trust myself taking the public transport yet, so I grabbed a taxi and headed straight downtown. My eyes were wide open the whole way down the Pan Island Expressway. The way lined with palms and the cleanliness and immaculate organisation of the place made me feel like I was somewhere I couldn't have imagined. Reaching the hotel at the famed Clark Quay area, I couldn't believe I was actually there on a complete other side of the world. I quickly stored my luggage in my room in the Robinson Quay Hotel. I walked along the river that night in disbelief that I'd actually made it there. The air was moist and I couldn't believe somewhere could stay so warm 24 hours a day. But I absolutely loved it. I have to admit, I had never told anyone this on this trip. I ran into 4 girls from the Philippines at Clark Quay and they followed me to my hotel room, and one of the girls proceeded to give me an experience while her friend recorded. This was my first taste of Asian hospitality. That memory has never left me. Anyway, after that experience, I loved exploring every inch of Singapore, and by the end of my 10-day holiday, I told myself I will have a job here by the end of the month. It was the start of July at that time, and by the end of July, I had a job lined up and was moving to Singapore permanently, or better, indefinitely. It wasn't long before I was dating an incredible young woman when I moved there. Her name was A. She was the kind of woman that you want to be married to after you've had all your cake and ate it too. Sometimes I look back on her and how she treated me and I feel pitiful for how it all ended. I knew at the time I had unpaid debts, a throbbing nature, and that would not be fair to keep dating her and having cravings for other girls. In the evenings before all the dating apps, one way I would meet new people online was Yahoo Chat, and that is where my Thailand story got its spark. It was around August 2008 when I got to chatting to what would become my future ex-wife. Her name is Nin. To say I was a monger would be an understatement. I was an animal at times, trying to claw back that sensual debt I felt I deserved. I should say and admit that I was quite a simp, or a nice guy depending on how you look at it. A very good looking but still nice guy, obviously with 42 years under my belt and one divorce later. I know the difference between being a nice guy and a good man. A good man stands up for what is right and maintains boundaries and checks the woman's disrespect or unrespectable behaviour. A nice guy allows his woman to treat him like a doormat and likely believes in the saying, happy wife, happy life. As a good man, I believe in happy spouse, happy house. Anyway, enough waffling. I was getting this young 21-year-old Nin to do all sorts of acts on camera on Yahoo Chat, and I got what I needed. After chatting more, she invited me to come visit her in Thailand. I'd already been living in Singapore for over a year, so I thought I needed to expand my horizons. Of course, I did not tell my Singaporean girlfriend why I was going to Thailand, just that I didn't want to go with her, and I told her I wanted to experience it the first time for myself, to let me experience it my way. She reluctantly agreed, and I was on my way to Thailand. I was so excited for my first trip to Thailand, and Nin and I had worked out the details that we would meet at the Suvarnabhumi airport at the tourist police area because she had previously been employed there because she spoke decent English. Nin was very cute, wearing skinny jeans and a tight white top. Her body was great, and I would describe it as a star in movies at a certain hub, if you know what I mean. Our plan was to catch a cab to Pattaya, of which I knew nothing about. This was in 2008, and things in Pattaya have developed so much since then. We had booked an extremely affordable room in a decent hotel. During our time in Pattaya, we drove around on a scooter, and she was quite a quiet person, so I thought. The aerobics were great. As I mentioned, she had an incredible body, and I was feeling like a star myself. In the morning, we had a simple breakfast in a little shop just down the street from the hotel condo. The day was filled with more driving around and eating every hour. We went jet skiing and sunbathing and generally had a really good time. I look back now and wonder if she was sussing me out as the nice guy I was the whole time. Returning back to Singapore for work, I decided that I would have to end it with my girlfriend there, and it was actually one of the easiest breakups I had. I knew that I didn't want it, and as I told you before, this girl was worth her weight in gold and as precious. Sometimes I wish I wouldn't have had to, but it was, and I was where I was in my life. So I did try to break it off with her and told her I would be moving back to Canada. That was a lie. And she said she still wanted to stay with me until I had to return to Canada. You can imagine I didn't want that burden until I had to go back. Anyway, being a nice guy, I couldn't say no, even though I tried insisting. A month or so later, I would have another trip with Nin. This time we went to Phuket, and that would be the final nail in my relationship with the Singaporean. I just didn't know it yet. Phuket was even more incredible than Pattaya. We did all the same things, walking streets, beaches and day trips. It was a blast, and as usual, tons of aerobics. Nim was still this friendly, quiet and agreeable person. I would later find out she was not. The long weekend came to an abrupt end, or so it felt, and I had to return to Singapore. What I was not expecting, and maybe foolishly so, was that one of my girlfriend's friends saw me and Nin in Phuket. At the time, I didn't realise how popular Phuket was for Singaporean travellers, but I found out on my return. The Singaporean called me upon my arrival and said we should meet. We met in one of the many parks, and she confronted me about everything, telling me her friends saw me there with a girl. I still feel sorry for that, but in my defence, I did tell her that I tried ending things with her because I knew I was going to do something like this, but I allowed myself to be pressured into continuing the relationship. Finally, that relationship was done and dead. I know I wounded her badly, and I do hope she was able to move on and have a happy and contented life. With that relationship behind me now, Nin and I were full steam ahead. She came to visit me in Singapore, and it wasn't long before my lack of high school precautions was to come back and bite me in the backside in the best way and the worst way. During this time, I was extremely excited to be a father. In fact, it wasn't more than 3 months earlier that Nin and I had gotten into a motorcycle accident near Hua Hin at Elephant Waterfall. No, it wasn't an elephant though, it was a dog that was sitting in the middle of the road. The dog lived. I ended up with a few broken bones from my wife landing on me and using me as a boogie board on the pavement. It was slightly healed when our daughter was conceived. Not more than a month into the pregnancy, Nin began to ask questions or make demands. I'm not really sure which. She said we should get married as it would not look good in Thai society to have a baby out of wedlock. Yet, I knew from the beginning that I didn't want to get married, at least to her, and there was someone still pulling at my heartstrings in my mind, and no, it was not the Singaporean. I told her that we didn't need to get married, and I was a type of man that is fine to take care of my responsibilities. She didn't want to accept that and insisted that we get married for culture and societal reasons. During the pregnancy, it was some of Nin's happiest times, and we really did have happy times together, telling our little girl about how great her life is going to be, having two loving parents. When my daughter was born, it was a beautiful time, and I felt as if I hit one of life's milestones. This was also the time when Nin began to change. Perhaps she had already been changing, and I was just being too nice to notice it. As my daughter grew past 6 months, the demands on me became more and more, and the abuse began to surface. It would start small with belittling comments about how much money I had. Then it would be a punch for not giving her what she wanted, or pulling my hair when she is upset with me, and me trying to stand up to her. When you have a child in tow, that can be difficult. By the time our child was 5, I was a shell of a man. I gave all my attention to my daughter as she treated me with kindness and happiness, and it allowed me to ignore Nin less obviously. Throughout those years, as my daughter grew up, I had tried convincing Nin to move to Singapore where we could both work and earn a lot more to build our home in Thailand. But she would never do it, always telling me when Lily is 1 year old and we move there, and when 1 year passed, it turned into 2, and 2 turned into 4, and then Lily was in kindergarten, and moving to Singapore was out of the question. Not long after Lily's 5th birthday, in order to make more money, I would need to get my full teaching certification in Canada so I could make much more money in international schools. It would also help to reduce costs of international school fees, which can be astronomical in Bangkok. This was a critical turning point. Going to Canada would require me to quit my job in Singapore, where I made good money, and move to Canada for a year with no income. I thought the sensible thing to do would be to take the whole family to Canada. That way, Lily could spend time with her aunts, uncles, cousins, and grandma and get used to some of the Canadian culture. Unfortunately, Nin did not see it that way. She couldn't see how it would save us money in the long run, or how it may help her see new opportunities. Leaving that August 2012 was a tearful parting, watching my daughter from the rear window of the taxi. It really hurt. It hurt to think this person who I had taken care of for 5 years didn't want to make the same sacrifices I was trying to make our family stronger. So I moved back to Canada for 10 months while I worked on my teaching certificate. I blew through that with flying colours, and I had great recommendations. Of course, I kept in touch with my daughter and my wife. Most importantly, over my time in Canada, was the respect people had for me, having worked overseas. I realise now that not everyone has the guts or the nuts to do such things. This newfound respect and the love shown by my family members really made me understand how poorly I had been treated over the past year by Nin. When I left that April back to Thailand, I recall telling them, "The next time you see me, I'll probably be divorced." 2013 came, and I did finally graduate and had a one-way ticket back to Thailand. Funny enough, I was actually stopped by immigration in Canada, and they asked me, "Where is your return ticket?" I told them that I was headed to Thailand to see my daughter and wife, and that I had a job lined up in Singapore with my previous employer. I then proceeded to show my passport with nearly 100 Thai stamps I had in it. This seemed to convince the officer, and they sent me on my way. Landing in Bangkok, I was not greeted by anyone, but that familiar humid blast that so many of your stories talk about, the warm air. When I arrived at my apartment, my wife could tell instantly that I was not the same man she knew when she saw me last. We spent a week together and I laid out clearly that things would need to change. This meant she would have to start working out, get a job, and start treating me with respect that I deserved. She could tell that I was serious but didn't seem to take it seriously. Things continued to be rocky for the next couple of months. I was back working in Singapore again, and life and work were good. I had developed several friendships over the years and they gave me amazing support, and I'm still close with many of them to this day. No names needed, but they all know how grateful I am. Those guys are the best. During this time, I would also meet my current wife, but that is a whole story for another time. October 2013 rolled around and Nin and I are still not seeing eye to eye on most things. She took zero of my suggestions to make her life better or herself feel better, and even worse, while I was away, she went away and got some surgery procedures. I missed her button nose, that was so cute and a trademark of many from Buriram area. I couldn't stand the new look and thought what that might make my daughter think. It saddened me a little. At this time, I thought I would give it one last hurrah to see if I could get the spark back into our relationship. For the occasion, I decided to secretly book a trip to Chiang Mai for Nin and I. I even got Lily's grandmother to agree to take her for the weekend while we got away on this romantic getaway. With little time for packing, I had to tell her about my secret plan. How do you think she should have, or how most people would react to having someone book them and all expenses paid weekend? Most would be ecstatic. The first thing out of her mouth was, "Who's going to take care of Lily?" I assured her I had arranged and took care of everything. After assuring her I had made all the arrangements, we dropped off our daughter and made our way to the airport. As you might guess, she did nothing but complain about every aspect of this trip. I'd love to say she complained about everything, but in fact she did not complain about the food. That was about it. I was so dejected from the whole experience that I couldn't even make the aerobics work out on this trip. Her attitude turned me off so badly that she repulsed me. I wouldn't stay in bed with her. I knew then that it was over. It was about a month later and I was still stewing over how ungrateful my wife was. I recall that time clearly because I was with my Chinese friend in a Japanese bookstore in Singapore's Orchard Road shopping district. While looking around, I received a message from a beautiful young woman that I did not recognize on WhatsApp. Not caring that I didn't know the messenger, I told my friend that this woman wanted to meet me and that I would get in touch with him shortly. I left the bookstore and met the mystery woman at the MRT station. I must have had my jaw on the floor because she was stunning, and I instantly remembered her as someone I had met about a year prior but had only hung out with her and her friend. After giving our greetings and messaging back to my friend at the bookstore, we all went out that night and had an unforgettable time. Unbeknownst to me, that beautiful woman would become my wife. Me and that woman kept in touch and we ended up having the same days off work, so we started meeting up regular just as friends at first. I was in no mood for drama and she provided that. She knew about everything going on for me and how miserable I was. After about 4 months of hanging out together, I decided to end things with Nin. I had finally enough, and hanging around this other woman made me think I had deserved someone who would treat me with respect. When I broke the news to Nin that I had finally had enough, she broke down in tears. I had no compassion or empathy left for her. I felt wretched for my daughter, but I kept saying to myself, do I want the next 10 years of my life to be peaceful and happy or miserable? I chose to be happy. From that point on, I never stayed at my wife's again. I would rent condos and bring my daughter there, and I would have great times together. I taught her to read and to swim and how to fight. She didn't seem to understand everything that was going on, but maybe she was smarter than I gave her credit for. You never truly know what children are thinking and the damage you can do to them. The ironic thing to all this is the soon-to-be ex finally began to take the advice that I so desperately suggested when it was too late to make a difference. I was done. Looking back on that relationship, I do think that most relationships can be salvaged, but they take a lot of courage by a nice guy to become a good man. Just a word of advice. how you start a relationship, and the boundaries you should uphold set the tone for the rest of the relationship. Lastly, Nin's parents were very disappointed with her. They were very good people and treated me with respect that somehow eluded their daughter. I would like to say a big thank you to them for always holding me in high regard and being on my side when everything went pear-shaped. Thank you, Peter, for reading this story out. There is a part 2 if the audience wants to hear the second part of the story, which is really a whole story by itself. Yeah, why not? I mean, if you're watching this and you've got another story, send it in. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was a well-written story. It's really weird, isn't it? I mean, you get some Thai girls who are desperate to get a guy to look after them, and when they finally get that guy, they just rubbish them. You know, they treat them so badly that the guy doesn't want to hang around, and who can blame them? I'm glad he found happiness, got married, and he's still in touch with his daughter. Worked out well in the end, as they say. Okay, 2 shorter stories to continue this on this Saturday morning. Let's jump straight into story number 2. Hi Peter, I sent you a story about 2 months ago about my trip with my son to Pattaya when he was 19. This story is a little different because it does not involve bar girls or even take place in Thailand. The Thailand story was in 2009. Besides that, he never dated anyone, ever. He was sleeping all day and playing computer games all night with online friends. The years passed and nothing changed. I wanted him to see a psychiatrist or psychological to understand why he did not want to work or go to school or do anything in his life besides sleeping and playing games. I tried to hire him to work for me in my business, but his heart was not in it, and he would just drag his feet until it was time to go home. This went on for the next 13 years with no end in sight. One day, he told me that one of the players he was gaming with was a woman and she had become his partner and he wanted to be with her. The only problem was that she had been engaged to someone for 5 years. He said that he did not care because he was in love. I asked where she was from and he said San Diego, California. We lived in Florida. He said he would drive there, rent an Airbnb and get a job. The whole thing was a complete shock, but we were happy that he suddenly decided to change his life overnight and get out of bed and get a job. Whatever else happened would happen. After 8 months of trying to pursue her, he gave up and came home. He said that he was going to get a job and go on a dating site and try to get a girlfriend. This sounded like good news. A few weeks later, he said that he wanted to talk to my wife and me about something important. He told us that he met a woman online and he was in love. They were sending messages all day and she was really beautiful. I looked at the messages and they looked like they were written by ChatGPT. He said he knew and that she lived in Siberia and she did not speak English. It was another total shock. They had been chatting for a few weeks and she said she wanted to come to the United States to be with him and marry him. At this point, I was thinking of the saying, be careful what you wish for, because she could come to the United States, get a green card and leave him heartbroken right after the broken heart he already experienced with a girl from California. I felt that no matter how you look at it, there is no real love after a few weeks of chatting. I said to him, do you know that it is all ChatGPT scripts and that she is just going to break your heart? The next day, he said she checked with the Russian government and she needed to deposit $7,000 before she could leave Russia. It made no sense to me. He said he knew and he told her that he did not have that much money and instead he was going to fly to Siberia. My wife and I looked at each other in disbelief and thought he was definitely crazy. My wife started crying because she thought he would end up in a Russian jail or even worse, dead. As much as we tried to talk him out of it, he refused to listen. He said that even if there was 1% chance she was real, he was willing to take that chance. A few days later, he said that he needed to get a visa from the Russian embassy in Washington, D.C. He made an appointment and drove to D.C. We were praying he would not get the visa, but he got it. A couple of days later, he said that he bought the ticket to Siberia and he was leaving in a few days. The whole family came to try to stop him, but he refused to listen to the crying of his sisters or anything else. He went to Costco and bought her chocolates and other gifts. The day of the trip came and I gave him my airport lounge card so he could rest between the flights. The first flight, I believe, was to Germany. After a layover, he flew to Morocco. After another layover, I think the next day, he flew to Moscow. He called me on WhatsApp video chat and looked depressed and upset. I asked, what happened. And he said he spoke with the girl and she could not believe he was in Russia. And she said she was very sorry, but she went back with her old boyfriend. I was not going to say I told you so because I did not want to make him feel worse. I said, as long as you are there, why do you not stay in Moscow for a few days and then come home? He said no, because as long as he was there, he was going to Siberia to find her. This was in November, and Russian winters are not a joke, especially for a guy who comes from Florida. He said tomorrow he would find the love of his life and try to convince her to leave her old boyfriend, and he felt like he was finally going to meet the love of his life. I asked, how would you find her? And he said that she told him she worked in a beauty salon in a small town, and how many beauty salons could there be in that little town? That night, he took the flight to Siberia, which I think was another 5 or 6 hours. He landed around 6 a.m. and said the airport was the size of a big supermarket and had only one flight a day from Moscow. Since it was 6 a.m., he decided to stay in the airport for a while and try to get the addresses of the beauty salons in town. About an hour later, a police officer approached him and asked him if he could help and said the airport was going to close soon and everybody was leaving. When he told the officer what happened, the officer felt bad and bought him some breakfast and told him he would drive him to a hotel nearby. He called me from the hotel and told me everything. I said, why do you not ask her to meet you for a cup of coffee as friends and see if she even wants to meet you after such a long trip? He said that he asked, but she told him that it would break her heart to see him knowing that he came all that way for nothing. He stayed in the hotel for a week and sent her messages every day until she blocked him. He could not go anywhere, and because of the snowstorms and freezing weather, a week later he flew back to Moscow and spent a few days there before coming home. He said that he loved Russia and would stay there if he could. This was in 2023. In 2024, he met an Asian American girl and they have been living with us and they're planning to get married next year. That's a really weird story, quite interesting as well. But I'll be honest with you, when I first read it, it was obvious to me that the first girl, the Russian girl in Siberia, it was obviously a scam and it probably wasn't even a girl. It's probably some guy who does this all the time. They'll pick a girl's photograph from a dating site or somewhere, someone really beautiful. He's a young guy, so he doesn't realise what's going on. He probably does now, and he's thinking he's talking to this beautiful girl, and all the time he's talking to some Russian guy maybe, or somewhere around the world. It doesn't necessarily have to be Russia, does it? And the hook is a $7,000, isn't it? So once, if the guy's in love and he does send $7,000, once that $7,000 is received by the scammer, that's it. He's blocked and he never hears from them again. And then the scammer moves on to their next victim. It always works like that. And I'm glad he didn't get scammed out of the $7,000, and at least he had a trip to Russia as a young guy. Right, let's go into our third and final story this morning. I submitted a story many years ago about dating a bank manager and how COVID blocked our relationship and ended up changing my life in ways I did not expect. Over the years, I have also found myself in several relationships with the demographics that seem to be overlooked, and I would like to share more about that. To start by describing myself, I am a 59-year-old divorced man with no children. I own a small trucking company and I am transitioning out of it as of 2026. I'm not wealthy by American standards, but I have built a life that offers a certain kind of freedom. I travel to Thailand 2 to 3 times a year, usually renting an Airbnb for 30 days and using it as a home base while I explore Asia. I am looking for a lifetime partner, but I'm not interested in bar girls or casual vacation relationships. What I have discovered is that mid-40s Thai professionals are often overlooked, especially by Westerners who never take the time to understand that Thai culture. But if you do, and if you respect it, embrace it, and truly listen, these women are exceptional partners, loyal, grounded, emotionally mature, and incredibly giving. One of these amazing women was Mint. Mint was an international banker who managed a team of 5 handling major financial transfers, the smallest of which she started at $12 million US. Her days were high pressure because interest rates and currency fluctuations could swing outcomes by tens of thousands of dollars. She thrived in that world. We met on Bumble on the first day of my 30-day trip, and our connection was immediate. She was very smart, confident, successful, a mother with a young son, a homeowner in Bangkok driving a new AMG Mercedes. She carried herself with a strength, elegance I admired. We played golf, went to fine restaurants, and simply enjoyed being together. Many Westerners do not realise that Thai culture involves very little public displays of affection, but if you respect that, the way Thai women treat you, it's unbelievable. Mint would pick me up, plan our time together, and make everything easy, and contrary to married assumptions, she often split the expenses or paid for everything herself. Her dedication to her son, her work, and her family impressed me deeply. I visited her twice afterwards, and we still communicate. Like many things in Thailand, our story is not finished and we will see each other again. The second amazing woman was PJ. PJ owned a pallet manufacturing company and was a true life of the party, vibrant, playful and full of energy. She walked into a jazz club and transformed it. Like Mint, she was extremely smart and successful with older children from a previous marriage and a strong sense of independence. We also met on Bumble. PJ loved the nightlife and her favourite jazz club and late night spots anywhere the music could carry us until dawn. Educated Thai women often speak perfect English, and with PJ, conversation flowed effortlessly. She was generous to a fault. We danced until sunrise, laughed as if the night would never end, and explored Thailand hand in hand. She made it clear she was not after my money. She travelled internationally for business and would often urge me to meet her abroad when our schedules aligned. With her, life felt exciting and full of possibility. The third woman was On. On was an extraordinary combination of talent, discipline and humanity. She was a fitness model and an artist. She was not wealthy, but she never asked for money, and in fact she often brought me food she cooked herself. Small gestures that meant more than anything money could buy. Fitness is a big part of my life, and it was hers as well. Unfortunately, her schedule was extremely demanding because early morning and early evening were the only windows she had usually spent in the gym. She had a daughter from a previous relationship, and she oversaw a team of 15 people who restored temples and created personal artwork for the royal family. Her life was built around discipline, devotion, and artistic service. Despite her limited time, she made room for me in thoughtful and meaningful ways, and our connection was quite quiet but strong, rooted in mutual respect, shared values, and the simple rhythm of workouts, home-cooked food, and brief moments that meant more because they were very rare. But here is the point of my story. The bar life, the drinking, smoking and partying, it can be fun and even amazing for some people. The bars are lively and entertaining, and they are a big part of Thailand's reputation, but they are not my thing. Thailand has some of the most beautiful, intelligent and successful women you will ever meet, far beyond the bar scene. And let me be clear, when I travel, I do spend money. On average, I budget $7,000 to $10,000 for a 30-day stay. Yes, I know it's a lot of money to spend, but I usually come home with money I did not use. My point is that I am not living cheap and I am not avoiding the nightlife. I just do not go there to find love. If you look outside the bars and if you look into the real Thailand, the country will embrace you in ways you never expected. And he's right about one thing. You know, a lot of guys come here and they go to go-go bars and beer bars and they hook up with girls and they become girlfriends. And most of the time it doesn't work out. I say nearly all the time, in fact. And what he's saying about, trying to date older professional Thai women, you can have good relationships. Take myself as an example. I've been with my girlfriend now. She lives with me here in Hua Hin. I've been with her for 3 years. She worked for 20 years in a hospital in Bangkok. She was 43 or 44 when I met her. You know, I've been with her and it's been, we've had our ups and downs and our little disagreements, but we've got a successful relationship. Everything's working out great. And if you really put the effort in and find maybe a little bit of an older woman who's a professional, you can end up with a very, very good partner, like the guy says, and like I'm proof, right, as well. Okay, guys, that's it once again. I hope you enjoyed these 3 stories. As always, if you're sitting on a story and you'd like to hear it be read out right here on Thailand Bound, send it in. I'll change the names, make it anonymous, and you too can have your story read out right here. One thing I'd like to ask you before you disappear, if you like the stories, you enjoy listening to them, give me a thumbs up. It doesn't cost anything, and it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. And of course, I do have a members live stream every 2 weeks. It's very cheap membership, and you do get early access to videos as well, okay? As always, a very big ask. But thanks for watching again, and I'll catch up with you for some more stories next Saturday.